and welcome back. How have you been? I hope you're doing very well, and I hope you're enjoying beautiful weather for those people who enjoy summer. And wherever you are in the world, I hope things are working very well for you and your family. You know, I have to check on that. And to remind you, it is Isabella Agitao here again. And I have been talking to you about stress because I feel and I know that stress, if not curbed, if not well taken care of, can be a dangerous thing and can bring diseases that can affect us. And you know, at the end of it all, everything that affects a unit affects us as socially. So this is my point, that we deal with the stress. And today here with me, I have my friend and colleague, Mrs. Nwayaki, who is a pastor, and she's also married to a pastor, and she is a family nurse practitioner and also a psych nurse practitioner. So she has a lot concerning stress that we can learn from her. So today she'll be explaining to us the symptoms and the things that happens to us physically, and we can now at the end of it all say, oh, I can now understand that I have stress. So this is my goal, to get to know when you are stressed. And I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for showing up and for finding time to come. This is Anne, and I know you'll be very helpful to this, to my viewers, and I know you are rooted because I work with you and I understand what you do. So thank you so much for coming, and welcome.
Thank you, Isabella. I am so grateful to be here this afternoon, great afternoon, and I am just so privileged to come and just be able to talk to to our viewers about stress. And the reason why is because the world we are living in, we cannot separate ourselves from stress. Actually, people who are in academia, people who are in all great walks of life, actually do experience stress. And people do talk about stress. You hear people every day talking casually. I am stressed out, or I have so much stress, or so and so is stressing me. And so this is such a great topic. Thank you even for us to have time to be able to even talk about it.
Thank you so very much. So I want you to explain to us, how do you define stress? I know I talked about emotionally, physical, psychological, but then how do you define stress from your point of view?
Just from, stress has many definitions. If you go to look into the definitions of stress, you can find various definitions. But what we would want to understand to this evening as we are talking about stress is the heritable vulnerability, or, the ability to deal with stressors, and I will mention about stressors, but I would say stress constitute pressure or tension within a person. And so whenever a stressor acts on that, that vulnerability, then you experience stress.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that's really, but I think it's to know that it's kind of like a tension within us that is actually the way we are, the way we are all made up.
Oh, okay, so that's good to know. And also, just to add on that, is this thing that makes you either you want to fight or fright, as I had mentioned earlier on. But then I want you to, Mrs. Wayaki, to also explain or kind of go deeper into that and give us symptoms. Because if I come to your office today and you look at me and I talk to you, and in your mind it's like, this is a stress, and it is different from a disease. I know stress is not really a disease, but how can you tell us that a stress can cause a disease? How do they merge, or how do they go hand in hand?
Or relate or interconnect.
Yeah.
I like the way you did mention about fight and flight, because I will mention that. But I would say that we are talking of stress, we are talking of stressors. But one thing that I want to say, to mention here is stress is biological. The fight and flight, it has biological or emotional responses, the way we respond. And I would say that the fight and flight is, our brain is made up of systems, just like our body is made up of systems. And the main part of the brain that deals with stress is we have the hypothalamus and we have the pituitary gland. So whenever a person comes into a contact with a stressor, and I want to go back a little bit and say that a stressor is a danger that is perceived by a person or a threat. If I perceive, or a person perceives something as a danger or a threat, then they will respond. They will feel that the stress response will be triggered. And therefore, going back to the hypothalamus and the pituitary, the hypothalamus is the part of the brain that communicates to the pituitary gland, and then the pituitary gland will start acting on that. And so what happens is, you look at a stressor, and then you perceive it as a threat and danger, and then now you as a human being, you have to do something about it. That is how our bodies function, and they are. So right there, the pituitary will get a message from the hypothalamus and will start secreting. Either it will secrete the hormone. There is adrenocortical hormone that is secreted. It will also maybe have something to do with thyroid hormone. There are a couple of hormones that are secreted, but I don't even want to get into that. What I'm saying is, this thing called stressor will cause your system to start engaging all the gears so that you can deal with the stress. And that is where we also see that people will start having the biological responses, like I said, will be like an increased heart rate, because it affects the respiratory system. Mm-hmm. There will be, your eyes can dilate. There will be the endocrine system can also be is also connected to that, or also influenced by whatever the body is going through, and therefore people will find that they will secrete more. The sweat glands will start secreting more. That's where people become sweaty. Mm-hmm. Or they get tense. Mm-hmm. And also, like I did talk about respiration, your heart rate will go high up, so it also affects your cardiac. What are we trying to say tonight? And probably we could just to mention a few of the things that happen to you physiologically. Mm-hmm. Which is your body, how your body is responding. Mm-hmm. What we are saying is that stressor, or that response to the stress, can start causing a lot of things to happen to your body. And therefore, you cannot be stressed and not know that you're stressed. Okay. Where we get to the point, to the point is when stress, a little stress is good. Mm-hmm. And you know that when you have an exam, mm-hmm. or when you have something like a talk, mm-hmm. To do, you could have some stress. And so that is positive. Mm. But whenever you have stress coming again and again, which is being caused by the stressor, which is the event that is causing it, and if it continues repeatedly, it can now cause a disease or dysfunction. And that is where now it crosses the fine line.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's very, very important to understand, because sometimes people say, I'm stressed, and then when the stress is all, overflowing, you're like, I'm sick. So it's good to understand that the stress can affect, maybe you could be having something going on, according to how I understand it, and then stress kind of triggers that, or kind of make it even worse. But then I've heard somebody saying, When I get stressed, I eat too much or I don't eat. So is there a correlation, or is there any way you can bring stress and not eating? How can you define that, or how can you say about that?
Yes, it is good that you're bringing that up, because when we are talking of stress as human beings, then every person, every individual is different, uniquely different. So we deal with stress very differently. That's why you find some people will do like the eating or do. But what we want to bring out to this afternoon or evening is adaptation. How do you adapt to that feeling of stress, or when you come into contact with the stressors? How do you respond to that? We call them defense mechanism or adaptive ways of dealing with the stress. Now, if you for instance, that example you gave of you eat too much when you're under stress, now that would be termed as maladaptive. You are trying to deal with your stress, but in a maladaptive way. So what are we saying? We are saying that stress, when it comes to human beings, they can either deal with it adaptively or we can deal with it maladaptively. And that is where we'll start talking about the interventions that you need to do, the things that you need to do before it tips to that point where it causes, if it is not resolved, then it will cause either disease or dysfunction.
Oh, okay, that's good. They are very good. Thank you so much. And so, can you also explain to us, like, which specifically, I don't know whether that's the word I could use, or which illnesses or diseases are really caused or are made to deteriorate from the stress point of because of stress?
Let's go back to the fight and flight. Fight means like you will engage yourself to kind of resist or fight, or you will run, right? That was installed or endowed in humans so that they can be able to deal with any danger. But like we are saying, if it keeps happening again and again, then it becomes a danger, or it becomes bad, in as it can cause many. Actually, I would say that stress is the underlying cause. So stress is a symptom and a cause of so many. It's an underlying means it is the root cause of many diseases. Like for instance, we did say that it affects you physiologically, or you have that biological response where your heart rate goes up, or it affects your blood vessels, they dilate and blood starts flowing through faster than, because you're in that mode of, engaging yourself to fight or to run. And so therefore it can, like for example, stress is one of the causes of blood pressure. Stress, when people come to my office, they say, I have had anxiety throughout my life, and and then you ask them, what is going on with your life? Because you want to know what is the root cause, where did this begin? And then they'll tell you that, I just no longer, I don't talk to my parents. That's a stressor right there. So they have no support system. I just lost my job, so they are worried about money. That's another, and it's one thing after another. And all those put together becomes your stressors, and therefore repeatedly puts your stress response under exposure. Like you are so much exposed that at that point, if not resolved, then you default to disease or dysfunction or impairment.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay, good to know. And then being a psych nurse as well, can you explain to us if you when people come to your office with stress or with stressors, from a psych point of view, what would be the symptoms?
Let me say that the people that I see actually come because they already tilted or defaulted into. Most of the people come already and they have already disease. They are in the disease point. Of course, there are people who come to our offices and they are stressed out, and they tell you that. But most of them, they are people who they have already been under stress so much that it went to a point that it's now anxiety, or they are depressed. Mm-hmm. So usually when we hear stress, it is actually people talking about one of the causes of the problem, the disease they already have. Oh. And at that point now, mm-hmm. we want to tell them how to de-stress, mm-hmm. So that at least we can be able, now we are in treatment at that point. Okay. We tell them they can go for psychotherapy. We tell them we could give them medication that will help to bring their chemical balance, their brain into, we tweak their brain so that they can be able to have, and I will not get into that, that our brain is wired like, the way there are wires in our brain, we call them neurotransmitters, or there's neurotransmission, which is a lot of firing being done. So we have the serotonin, we have the dopamine, we have the norepinephrine, we have the glutamate. Those are like the neurotransmitters that deal with our emotions and the way we feel. So the serotonin is actually the one that, and norepinephrine is the one that is connected to stress, to anxiety. I want to say anxiety and depression. But what am I saying? I'm saying that if we can de-stress, if we can take care of stress, probably will not default to anxiety or to depression or to any or to mental illness.
Oh, okay. Wow. So, my viewers, you can see how the physical kind of goes to mental and to all these areas. That's why I keep on telling you that we have to take care of ourselves holistically. So, thank you so very much. We have really gotten to understand stress from a physiological point of view. But as I have told you previously, you can hear all what results from stress. You can hear how some diseases are even triggered or are even deteriorate from stress. So as I have told you, we have to take care of stress. And Mrs. Anwayaki told us there's no way we can be in this world all, and not be stressful. Be stressed out. So we have to understand and we have to know how much is stress, how much is how much stress. So we have to understand that. But we'll come back at some point.
Just one thing, Isabella, there's one thing that you did mention that is very, very important, especially to our viewers, when you just say that there are people who say that, you say that we are all vulnerable to stress, or to stressful situations, or to stressors. Why? Because stress and the stressors are related to your environment. And your environment is where you live in, where you grew up. It could be the way you were brought up. Maybe people that brought you up were, they had a lot of stress and they used to worry so much and all that. It could be just maybe your genetic makeup. Genetic coding. How are you're more vulnerable to stress than someone else. So all those things. So you cannot say, I don't want stress, or I never stress. Some people even sometimes put it at the back of their mind and they think they don't stress. And those are the people that we would really want to address tonight, that we can never ever say that we don't stress. We do stress, and it is okay to have some little stress, but when it is not taken care of, or when you're stressed and you do not know or you ignore it, then it becomes a problem.
Wow. Can you imagine that? We all hear people saying, I'm stressed out, and some people, I never get stressed out. So from today, we have really gotten to understand very well. So we'll come back at some point and explain to you how to deal with stress, because I know we kind of touched all different angles of how we get stressed, and we want to know then all this stress, how do we deal with it, how much is stress. So thank you so much, and have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you.